Assalamu alaikum, how are you doing? Huh?
So what are we talking about tonight?
Well, what we were talking about, the theories of Roy Baumeister, who wrote a book on willpower, and the question at hand is whether willpower is a finite or is it infinite resource. Now, Baumeister's conclusion is that it's finite, and that you can have, and by the way, I do recommend this book. I think it's quite an interesting one on willpower. And that basically when you do activities that are not related, like not in the same category, but different activities, but unrelated activities, that your bandwidth of willpower reduces in so doing. So for example, I'm giving my own examples here, but this is his idea. If I do studies, and let's say I do like hard exercise, both of these things contribute to reduction in my willpower. That's how I understand Roy Baumeister's theory. He actually has his own laboratory, and obviously he's a psychologist, and he cites a few examples and a few studies. One of them is, I think it's Radish, and basically there's people that were given chocolates or some kind of snack and then told to resist.
Delayed gratification.
Yeah, so basically, long story short, those who were given the treat were able to exercise more willpower, okay?
Yeah.
And he tries to show through this that, well, that means that we have a finite reservoir of willpower. And then he starts giving, like, if you want, self-help tips on how to mitigate or control or manage that. And I heard something from Andrew Huberman, obviously, who's not a psychologist per se, but was saying that there's some evidence from his lab or from some study that he read that shows that if you believe you have finite willpower, then you're more likely to operate at a lesser level. But if you believe that you have an infinite willpower, then you're more likely to operate at a high level. But
this is the thing I was saying to you before we started filming. I don't believe in that limited willpower stuff. You know the judges study that we were talking about before, or for example the Radish thing or whatever it is. There are limits to the mind. That mindset that there's limits to the mind will actually create those limits. But obviously there's some factors like your energy, your sleep, and your nutrition or whatever it is. But other than that, think of somebody whose daughter has gone missing. Is there ever a moment like 2 o'clock in the morning, okay, my willpower's going down, I'm going to go to sleep now? No, they have a relentless willpower. So I think some of the studies that you're citing, and one of the things that we should talk about is you're doing MMA and you're doing academia, right? So you're expanding the bandwidth, you're increasing your capacity for willpower in these particular domains. So these things are very, very important. So when you did that, if you put the limit, look, I'm an academic, I'm doing a PhD, I'm doing Azhar, because you hadn't finished Azhar by that time, you're working on some debates, you're doing this, you're doing that, and for the fight, then you'd think, no, I have a limited willpower. But clearly you had a willpower for MMA.
I can see the argument there. However, I'll be honest, there's a few things. Obviously, from a religious paradigm perspective, the Quran says, "La yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha."
Yeah.
That Allah does not burden a soul more than it can handle. But wus'a is basically talking about a particular capability. Yeah. So it would indicate, from a Quranic perspective, that every human being has a particular capacity, and that Allah will not burden us more with that particular capacity. Look, on the example of if someone's daughter got lost or something, I do think there's a point where they will get exhausted. I think there's a point where anyone can get exhausted. They would literally go to sleep.
No, because there's a difference between exhaustion and depletion of willpower. I think we have to make this distinction.
But there may even be a depletion of willpower over like 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years. So like, for example, the first day she got lost, the willpower might be, let's say, 100. But the 20th or 50th, maybe, let's say, 85. Then let's say 20 years later, it's gone down to 50, for the sake of argument. So there's that. But here's how I would respond to this bit about, for example, when I was juggling different things, different activities and stuff like that, and how this theory actually helped me with that. Because it taught me or made me realize the importance of strategic rest. So for example, like when you realize you have a capacity, you don't put everything on your plate. So you start realizing, okay, I'm doing 1 task, 2 tasks, 3 tasks. That my bandwidth is at this level, and if I put another task, I will function at a lesser level on these tasks.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to just leave these tasks here, and I'm gonna have to rest here, 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 and here. The way you start thinking about it is like petrol in a gas tank. Okay.
Yeah.
Like let's say I'm driving a car or whatever it may be, and you realize that if I keep moving around, I have a limited resource pool, and if I use it all up on this or that or the other, helping this person, helping that person, then I'm spreading myself too thin, and it will lead to mental exhaustion, psychological exhaustion, make me closer to burnout, and therefore I won't be as effective.
This, you may be speaking about hyper focus and scattered focus, because we know this, right? We know that if you try and focus on too many different things at one given moment, then you're not gonna do that well in any of those particular things. But what I think we are disagreeing about is the capacity of and the depth of mental capabilities and how far they actually go when it comes to gritness. Because look, you gave the example earlier of we were speaking about David Goggins, right? And coming out of your comfort zone and doing these types of things. These are linked to your beliefs. Can I do this or can I not do this? And those beliefs are set where? By the external environment or by your internal architecture? It's the internal architecture, right?
I say both.
We can say that, for example, if you're someone that suffers from type 2 diabetes, that will affect your willpower. Would we agree on that?
Yeah.
To an extent, it'll affect your willpower. At the same time, we also believe that the meaning you give something will give you an elastic range from which you're allowed to put yourself through a certain kind of suffering. What the hell is what is going on there?
He's just gone the wrong place, actually.
This is fun. But anyway, what do you think of that?
Yeah, the thing of infinite anything, I think that only belongs to Allah.
I mean, no, of course.
So
Allah's the ultimate willpower. Absolutely.
Infinity doesn't exist in the real world, Danny. So when they talk about infinite willpower, I think we're talking about something like, how does that actualize in the material world?
Yeah.
I think that the more everyone has a breaking point. The higher stakes are, the more the person is likely to break. Like, for example, from the eschatological perspective in the Quran, we find that يوم يفر المرء من أخيه, that the day when the man will run away, or the person will run away from their brother, وأمه وأبيه وصاحبته وبنيه, and his own son and his own friend and companion, which is the spouse, etc. You're running away, yani. Yeah. That one of them wishes that they would ransom themselves for that, yani, for the world for themselves. So the point I'm making is, when the stakes are led to a certain level, like no one has the willpower to overcome hellfire, for example.
Yes.
But, yani, so there are some limits to willpower from that angle. In this world, there are limits as well, and Allah knows exactly what our limits are and what He's promised us in the Quran. He's promised us that your limits are not going to be overcome. Yani, He's not going to put something in your way that you cannot handle. You can handle everything that you're given, actually, in your life. But in terms of willpower, I think it's like resilience and willpower are, in many ways, there's many things that are written on. Goldman has the same Goldman that wrote the book Emotional Intelligence, has something on emotional resilience as well. I think it's important that now, coming up to Ramadan especially, that we start thinking about willpower and the willpower to overcome things like addictions and stuff. And do you know, I was thinking, support, I mean, you should do a series on addictions.
You know, this
on your channel.
Yeah, because phone scrolling is just the entry. That's the but then it comes to addiction of fame. Like, addiction of fame is a huge thing. Then addiction to sex, porn addiction, drug addiction. How many people in their 40s now, because they were smoking weed in their when they were teens or whatever, they're still doing that now. Then there is the addiction that is the most common, which is the addiction to wealth. You know, people becoming billionaires, but they're still earning more and more. So what's your idea about addiction? You know, this addiction series?
I was reading a book called The Addiction Recovery Skills Workbook, because I think that what I want to try and contribute, maybe on your channel or something like that, but on somewhere, is talking about, because Last year, I spoke to the woman who wrote Dopamine Nation. Yeah, it was like the bestseller, and now she's doing the rounds on the podcast, doing very well. But I had her on the podcast last year, and
I think it's the year before.
What was the year before?
20. Yeah. So Dopamine Nation. Tell us.
I had her on the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the year last year I had her on or the year before, but she actually mentioned something in that podcast was so interesting, and she didn't realize she was saying it. She goes that in order to create a habit for yourself, that you sometimes need 30 days of doing it. And she said it in Ramadan, not knowing that it was Ramadan. I said, well, in Islam, we're actually practicing fasting right now, and it's Ramadan. Yeah. She goes, yeah, but many other religions have the same thing, but not many. Actually, no other religion has 30 days of consecutive fasting. So Allah has put for us a program to help us break addictions, and it's a beautiful thing that لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, that we should consider Ramadan as a time, like for example fasting, where you're basically denying yourself the sensory pleasures and the basic visceral and carnal needs of food, drink, sexual intercourse, and the like. That what that does is, from a dopamine perspective, it actually allows you to enjoy the small pleasures of life in a more meaningful.
You go through a detox.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, if you're always on screens every day, if you consider the following, if you're always on screens every day, if you're always having sex every day, if you always, and you can still have sex every day, there's no problem. I'm saying if you're always doing something every time, like all the time,
dopamine spikes,
then your tolerance for that, for whatever it is, increases. You need more now to fulfill the same need because of the dopamine hit. Yeah. So,
and your baseline goes down. This is very important.
Yeah,
so your baseline of dopamine actually goes down when you go through these peak experiences, and it goes beneath the baseline, so that you actually feel worse. This is why nobody is, like, for example, if someone's addicted to zina, they're not going to keep committing zina. They're actually going to commit it and then feel regret afterwards, feel down afterwards, feel like, where does that come from? It's our natural biological process, or else people will just be like crackheads.
Unbelievable. But do you know what else?
But actually, again, with crack, there's some nuances there. Yeah.
You know, you talk about that, and it's very interesting, because let's take sexual intercourse as an example, right? Look, sexual intercourse, there are three things I would say, and this is not from a peer-reviewed thing, but it's just from my mind, yeah, as the sex expert that I am. No, I'm joking. But there are three things that make, like, sexual intercourse a novel and interesting exchange, yeah. Number one, you could say curiosity. 3 pillars of sexual intercourse. I was thinking of doing maybe something with Hamza on this in the future. But number one is curiosity, yeah. Number 2 is mystery, which is slightly different to curiosity. And number 3 is impermissibility. Now, that one there, let's put like an asterisk on that for a second, but these are 3 things that make sex interesting. In the same way as, for example, like, imagine you watch true crime, you've watched like documentaries about murder mysteries and whatever, yeah? So imagine if you're watching a murder mystery and in the first scene they tell you who done everything.
Yeah.
It kills it. It destroys the suspense.
Look, those two are understandable, but why impermissibility? Because I don't really agree with that.
No, I'll come to it. So what it is in the West now, because everything, the curiosity is killed. They've killed the curiosity. They've killed the mystery. Like, you're literally walking around in the summertime in one of these European countries, and the woman is showing you 95% of her body. She's showing you 95% of her body. Now, you might think, oh, that's fantastic. And from a hedonistic perspective, for the short term, it may be. But the thing is, even from a hedonistic perspective, ironically, from a hedonistic perspective, it actually kills the sexual experience, because you want to unravel the murder in the case of the murder mystery, right? You want to undress the murder, see who the killer is, and so on. You are not doing that when you're just you're showing me everything in the first instance. So the 2 things, ironically, that the Western society has done to try and appease its own appetite is actually destroy its own appetite. So that's the first thing I would mention. In terms
okay, because that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think we should just stretch that point a little bit. Don't you think the same things happened when somebody, say, wins the lottery and then they become miserable afterwards? they don't even need to gamble anymore because they're already rich.
To a lesser extent, because with that, at least they have money that they can use for different novel experiences.
Okay, yeah.
But with this one, actually, like if you're having intercourse and you've seen this and you've done that, you run out of things to do and people to have intercourse with and positions, scenarios. It kills, the curiosity is gone. Like, you watch all the pornography categories that are out there. You've had sex with all the kinds of women, that you've done all the positions, you've done everything. The curiosity is gone. This leads to, you will not be as excited in this in a sexual exchange as a person who's lowering his gaze and trying to preserve their chastity and trying to
don't you think that's kind of like in Ramadan where we're fasting all day and you just get something very simple to break your iftar with, a grape a
exactly
day, and you feel like a grenade of taste in your mouth.
That's a good way of putting it. A grenade of taste is like a fantastic, it's like a party in your mouth and everyone's invited. That's genuinely the same thing, you can eat the same meal, but because it's been preceded by fasting, it has same thing with sex.
Wouldn't you say that would lead, I mean, if we were to use this analogy, a person who's living in a society which is very conservative would accidentally see the ankle of a woman, will feel a higher dopamine rush than someone walking around on Copacabana Beach.
I'll be honest with you. I think that those examples are, the mythological examples of the past. There's no such society that ever existed, an ankle of woman. I mean, this is, you always saw women, slaves, this, that, and even medieval societies, you see more than the cat of the woman. But the point does stand. The point is that the less you see, the more you want to see, the more you get from seeing, In terms of impermissibility, I think it's pretty established now in psychology, but even Ibn Qayyim mentions it in his book, Ad-Da' wad-Dawa'. He says, Al-Mamnu' marghub, that something which is impermissible is interesting to someone, or is wanted, it's desired, I should say. Something which is impermissible is desired. And it's just how human beings. I mean, when it comes to romantic relationships, when a father is a bit too staunch with the daughter and tells her what she can't go with this guy, she cannot be with him. Some psychologists have dubbed this the Romeo and Juliet effect. Actually, it makes them want it even more.
Do you know what? Just on that point, there's a guy who wanted to marry this girl. Her father wouldn't approve. They wouldn't get married. Years of whatever. Finally, something happened. She got married. The marriage ended in divorce. It didn't last. It hardly lasted a week. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's tragic. Obviously, I'm not laughing at that. I'm just the irony of it. Of course, the irony of the situation is that sometimes when you have overbearing parents who stop you from getting married, that makes that person want to get married to the person you're stopping them from getting married even more. Had you been a little bit more lenient and understanding and thinking about it and considering it, and not being too demanding, I'm not saying yes or no, the Wali's position, I'm not challenging any of that, but I'm just saying that had it been a little bit more lax and more relaxed, essentially the girl would have come to her own decision not to. So the point is that when you make something impermissible, sometimes it makes it more.
That makes sense.
Do you get what I'm saying?
We're not too far from our destinations. Let's go back to the mother topic, which is to do with mental toughness, willpower. Ramadan's about to come. We were having a discussion about that mental sort of calluses that you can build, how you can build your resilience. One of the things that you've done, that we've been discussing for a while now, is the ability to do multiple different things. So how do you build that discipline? Because ultimately that's what Ramadan's about, right? Building that discipline. So how would you recommend people do that? If they're really like difficult, like they're complete slobs, say at slob level.
Look, there's something that in psychology they refer to as chunking. So is that you have slots of time that you dedicate for a particular activity. So I know that from this time to this time I'm going to do this activity, and this time I'm going to do this activity. So I reckon that a timetable is imperative. Like if you sit down and say, okay, I'm going to do half an hour of Quran a day, 1 hour, one juz, whatever it is, have a target for yourself and fulfill that target. Whether it's I'm going to do 20 minutes of exercise or 30 minutes, or I'm going to do 20 minutes of walking or 30 minutes. So for me, I've always operated on that paradigm since I was 15 years old, frankly, I'm going to do this, that. And then I'd look at it, I'd have a little journal and see how productive I've been and account myself accordingly. That's basically, that's as simple as it gets. You're as disciplined as you allow yourself to be. you know.
So you can also do habit stacking.
Yeah.
So one of the things about habit stacking is there's a habit that you do on time.
Yeah.
You use that habit to build other habits. So we pray 5 times a day. So you can build a habit like, okay, after each prayer I'm going to do this, right? So that's another thing.
I think James Clear mentioned that in Atomic Habits, right? It's always
habit stacking. Yes. Yeah.
And that's a good book as well. If people are interested in like habits and stuff.
Atomic Habits.
To be honest,
yeah.
Atomic Habits is not bad.
No, at all. Okay, guys, so there you have it. We're giving some thoughts on mental toughness. We're going to have an addiction series. I think it's a fantastic idea. We should definitely have that sort of series. And tell us what you think about these car videos. The last video did really well. A lot of people are watching, a lot of people are commenting. I think they like this unscripted, not sitting in a studio somewhere, just random thoughts at the side of the road and just having this sort of conversation. So yeah, any parting thoughts?
No, that's it. I think that we will try and do at least a couple of videos on the addiction topic, because I think it's the best and easiest time for Muslim people to free themselves of addiction in Ramadan, by the way. So, and we're all addicted to something, whether it's screens or sugar or caffeine. No one's we're not trying to be judgmental here.
Zombie scrolling. We know that's the biggest one.
We're not trying to like holier than thou or whatever. We can all benefit from that stuff, you know.
Absolutely. Jazakallah khair.